ஆறாங்க வீடு எடுத்தாங்க.
Good morning to one and all present here. It is said that great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. Today is one such day where we come together to learn, reflect, and be inspired. I, on behalf of Nazareth Morgoshish College, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this enlightening session. To begin our gathering by seeking the blessings of the Almighty, let us bow our heads and offer our prayers. I now request Dr. J. Mary Stella to lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us fifth day FDP program together virtually today. Although we are in different places, we know your spirit connects us. As we open our hearts and mind to learn and discuss together, we ask your guidance, love, and protection. This day, we humbly invite your presence amid this gathering of people and bless each one of us with focus, patience, and understanding. Let your thoughts and beautiful intention flow upon us. We open our ears to receive them, to keep in our minds. We pray for our today's speaker. Bless him abundantly. Give your own wisdom and knowledge to deliver the speech. Fill us with knowledge and discernment to understand new concept and perspective. May all that is studied here today renew our minds and bring us closer to you and each other. Be with us throughout this meeting. We ask all these things in the mighty name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am, for that beautiful invocation. As the Bible says, the Lord is near to all who call on him. May his guidance be with us throughout the session. Next, I invite Ms. G. Vansi Trinsiol to read a passage from the Holy Bible.
Good morning to all. Today Bible reading portion from Philippians chapter 4 verses 4 to 8. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God will transcend all your understanding, will guide your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the Lord and the God of peace will be with you. Here ends the lesson.
Thank you, ma'am, for those inspiring words. The Bible reminds us of the importance of wisdom and knowledge, and it is that quest which brings us here today. Now, to formally welcome our resource person and participants, I call upon Mrs. T. Eunice Solomon to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. With a new day comes new strength and new thought, and we are here in the fifth day of our faculty development program to gain new knowledge and thought. I am much privileged to welcome you all for today's session. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to our college secretary, Mr. S. Premkumar Rajasingh, for his tireless efforts for the welfare of the college. I also welcome our esteemed principal in charge, Dr. R. G.V. Esther Ratna Kumari. Her guidance and support are invaluable to our institution. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Samuel Rufus, Associate Professor from the PG and Research Department of English, Madras Christian College, as our distinguished chief guest. Sir, your expertise will undoubtedly enrich our program. And to our dedicated faculty members and enthusiastic participants, a heartfelt welcome to the 5th day of our faculty development program. Your active participation is what makes this day event truly special. Once again, I welcome you all. Let's make the most of this day and continue to learn, grow, inspire one another. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's now time to introduce the distinguished speaker for today's program, someone whose words and wisdom we are eagerly looking forward to. I request Ms. S.R. Samlin Golda to introduce our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Samuel Rufus.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's faculty development program. We are truly fortunate to have with us Dr. S. Samuel Rufus, Associate Professor and Dean of International Programs at Madras Christian College, Chennai, as our chief guest. Dr. Rufus has an impressive journey spanning over 22 years in teaching and research. His accomplishments speak volumes about his dedication and hard work. He has received the University Gold Medal and the President Venkatraman Gold Medal for Academic Excellence, along with the Tamil Nadu Government Merit Scholarship for Excellence in Postgraduate Studies. Dr. Rufus has authored several books, including Aura of the Other and Essentials of Communication for Advanced Learners of English. He has also edited several journals and books. Beyond this, he has played a pivotal role in organizing guest lectures by renowned authors such as Anita Nair and Ramabai Espinat. He has also conducted engaging workshops and lectures for education and educators and students. Dr. Rufus is a sought-after speaker known for simplifying complex topics and sparking meaningful discussions. He has demonstrated his commitment to excellence in education through his leadership roles. We are eager to hear from Dr. Rufus today, and I look forward to gaining fresh perspectives that will inspire us in our work. Sir, it is an honor to have you with us. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samlin, for that insightful introduction. It is indeed a great honor to have Dr. Samuel Rufus with us today. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite our resource person, Dr. Samuel Rufus, to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Sir, you are not audible, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful introduction. I wish all the participants today a very rewarding FDP, Faculty Development Program lecture today. The topic I'll be talking on today is environmental humanities. So a very pressing topic of our times, because since 1970, when we saw a survey that told us that 60% of the animal species in our planet have almost disappeared. 60% of the animal species in our planet are almost disappeared. In 1952, we all know how the cheetah was declared extinct in India. And we now know the wild fox. Yes. Hello? Yes. So, yeah. The wild fox has recently become almost extinct in parts of India. The same with a lot of bird species that we have, reptiles that we have. So why environmental humanities? This is a question that we as students, scholars, teachers of literature might want to ponder today. So let's begin with how humanism started, or the humanities started early in the 15th century, when we had the new learning happening in England. When scholars from England, they went all over to these centers of learning in Padua, Greece, Italy, all these centers of learning, they went and they came back and they revived or gave a rejuvenation of the literature here in England. So you had the first type of literature that we had was not poetry, not not novel, but it was humanistic literature. So they were the humanists, not the poets, not the novelists. And what did these humanists do? These humanists took us away from the sphere of religion. Till then, religion was supposed to be the moral code that gave moral laws for the society. But the humanists came up and they said, no, religious moral codes cannot be applied to a democratic society or a civil society, rather. So they wanted to have a separate moral code, civil code, law code for the society, and with an emphasis on humanity. You have the Prince of Humanists coming up, and very soon after, there was a renaissance of humanism. And ever after, you have humanism donning the mantle in the literary sphere also. We all know how theory in the 19th and in the 20th centuries also gave a lot of importance only from the human point of view. So we wanted a new learning. Like in the 15th century, there was a new learning that awakened the sensibilities of the reader. Today, Spivak told us earlier, some 2 decades ago, she said, we need a new humanities that would be inclusive in its appeal. All these days, the word human in humanities always centered on the humans. So we needed a fresh look at the humanities, and that is one reason why we called environmental humanities. Now, you find there is a division for the past 24 centuries. We all know there was this divide right from Plato's time, Aristotle's time. We have this division, this binary of, East and West, or, right and wrong. When in the 19th century, Heidegger and Nietzsche especially came and told us we should know how to think beyond good and evil. I might sound a bit controversial here when I tell you that we should think beyond good and evil, because the concept of good and the concept of evil, according to Nietzsche, who heavily influenced Hitler, is purely relative. It is not fixed, says Nietzsche. So we had these binaries ruling us for the past 24 centuries and more, and this nature culture divide. Environmental humanities yokes both of them together. Nature and culture come together. In bioregional studies, especially, you'll see life and place, they come together. They are a single word here, life, place. So environmental humanities gives a kind of an ecological orientation to the humanities. It need not necessarily be in literature alone. All the fields of the humanities. It could be environmental art, environmental philosophy, environmental music, environmental psychology, environmental history, environmental politics. It could be anything, but that connects with the environment. Why is that? Because of the climate change that has been happening, and we call it the earth is in the grip of a fever, uh, a high fever, we call it. So, because of global warming and climate change, and what has been done to address these issues from the literary perspective? Let's talk about from a literary perspective as scholars and practitioners of literature. I just want to put forth a few questions before I continue on the talk. One is, what good does literature serve me? What good does the study of literature serve me? I practice literature, what good is this literature to me and to the society that I inhabit? Because Aristotle says human beings, let's not use the word man here, being sexist. Human beings are social beings. Karl Marx also says humans are social animals. So, in this context, what good does the literature that I do practice in the classroom, teach in the classroom, learn in the classroom, do to me and to the society around me? What is the impact of this literature? What is my role as a teacher of literature? What is my function as a teacher of literature? What is my function as a student of literature? Maybe these might sound a bit philosophical questions also. When I ask my students about these questions, they're not able to come out with forthright answers per se, because these questions make us think a lot. What good does literature serve me and the society? What is the function? Function means the role and the responsibility of a teacher of literature. Then, what is the function of a student of literature? What is the function of a literary critic? The last one, what difference does the study of literature make towards my attitude or perspective towards society, towards nature, towards fellow human beings? What good does the study of literature make towards my attitude, towards my perspective, towards my perception? Does it change? How does it change? So these are some rudimentary questions I'd like to put forth. Maybe towards the end also, I might want to ask these questions back again as takeaway points for us to think about it. So the literary critic, we all know, is different from the public critic. In the 19th century, especially, we had these rigorous demarcations, these binaries. The literary critic or the academic critic was very rigorous in their pronouncements. They had yardsticks, like the doctors, the medical doctors had medical surgeons. We called ourselves literary surgeons, surgeons of literature. So we had a lot of literary devices as surgical implements to dissect a text. And not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can dissect a text unless and until they were masters of these literary devices. So the literary critic had a verdict because literary critics usually doubled up as literary judges. They were judges. Northrop Frye calls a literary critic as a literary judge. Why? Because a judge, a judge in a court of law, just imagine the Chief Justice of the Madras High Court or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, a justice or a judge who has to play the role of a judge in a court should know everything about the law or almost everything about the law. Without that, they don't have this valid authentication to pronounce their judgments. Same is the case with the literary critic. The literary critic or the academic critic had this responsibility on them. What? They had to know a surfeit of literature. They had to know an extraordinary, vast array of literature. Only then they could make judgments or pronouncements. Because M.H. Abrahams, we all know, defines literary criticism as 5 terms he says. I'll just give that for you now. Define, classify, analyze, evaluate, and interpret a work of art. But literary critics were different from the public critics. We all know after a famous movie is released or the movie of a famous hero is released on the screens, what happens is immediately after the first show is over, you will find a lot of people, media people, YouTubers waiting outside to ask for the reviews. How was this movie? How was this, the content of this movie? How was the characterization? All these things they ask. So the public critic gives a different perspective of the work of art. M.H. Abrams calls it a work of art. The public critic gives a completely different perception or perspective or attitude on the movie. But the academic critic has rigorous rules by which they pronounce their verdict. But the crisis happens when the academic and the public critic don't gel. The public critic does not have the laws, the rules. They might be sexist in their pronouncements. The academic critic will be cautious on that. The public critic might be patriarchal. The academic critic is well sounded on that. So they'll be very reserved on that. But unfortunately, the role and the responsibility of the academic critic down the ages has always been human-centric. Anthropocentric, we call it. And that is one reason why there is this divide where nature has always been used. There is a term that is very prevalent today, especially in the post-colonial context. We call the word tokenism, T-O-K-E-N-I-S-M. Tokenism is just for the namesake. You do just some spade work and just show off that you also have a love for nature. That will be a huge banyan tree in front of the house or in that sprawling campus. But you fell the banyan tree, you fell the neem tree, you fell the tamarind tree, and then erect a huge house or a palatial building there, and then have some potted plants in front. That's called tokenism. I also love nature. There were tokenist nature lovers also in literature. Like, for example, Wordsworth. I'm not trying to criticize Wordsworth when I say this, or Robert Frost, or all these so-called nature poets that we have in literature are called tokenist nature lovers because they went to nature just because they wanted some solace from nature, not because they loved nature for the sake of nature, like art for art's sake. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floated high over vales, when all at once I saw a cloud, a host of golden daffodils. Then what happened? That scene in my heart I bore in the other poem also. It transformed me. Now I am well. Now I'm okay. We don't go to cities for summer. We go to hill resorts. Why? Not because of a genuine love for nature, not because we love the trees there, but because we want to get solace there. That is a tokenist view or attitude according to environmental humanists. They say this is just a hogwash, just for the namesake you do something. Even Robert Frost, he calls in that wonderful poem, Stopping by Woods, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but, the woods are lovely, the woods are dark, the woods are deep, but something that borders on the American dream, individualism and materialism. So he goes back. He doesn't want to stay back. But in the 19th century, you have 1854, if I'm right, Thoreau, this Walden Pond. He went and lived there 2 years with just one set of clothes on him. He just went to Walden and he lived there near Walden Pond with nothing for him. Just for a couple of years, he lived there and he observed. One practical book that I wish it were prescribed in universities and colleges. We have it prescribed. So what difference did it make to his sensibility? He says, I wanted to live deeply. There is a difference between the words dweller and a resident. A resident always thinks of himself or herself as a person who resides in a particular place. They will not be conscious of the surroundings. They will not be conscious of the earth that they live in. Is it red soil, clay soil, yellow soil, loamy soil? They are not interested or bothered about that. They're not interested in the reptiles that inhabit the region along with them. They're not bothered about the birds that are around them. They just come, exploit the place, and then they go back. That is a resident. Heidegger, one of the best philosophers of the 20th century, Being and Time, some immortal stuff that he has written, 1927, if I'm right. Heidegger gave us a term called dweller. A dweller is a person who lives an interconnected life in the place in which they inhabit. They're very conscious of where they dwell. And everything around them, every living species around them matters a lot for them. So it could be the dogs, the cows, the birds, the reptiles, the flora, the fauna, the trees. Everything around them matters, like Fridge of Capra says in The Web of Life. They feel that they are a tiny speck in the part of the great grand web of life. They feel they are also just a part of the great scheme of things. They have this great sensibility on them that I am a dweller, not a resident. A dweller, in that sense, is a person who lives a conscious living. We call it an interconnected consciousness. And this interconnected consciousness, that's why I asked in the first 5 questions that I gave. What good is the study of literature? Does it cultivate this interconnected consciousness in us? Does it transform our sensibilities to include ourselves as dwellers in the place that we inhabit? So Walden, the Thoreau's Walden, he goes there and he lives there as a dweller, and he lives a very conscious, interconnected life. He comes out with some radical philosophies for life. That some of the philosophies that he comes out with are radical, but today's ecological crisis that we inhabit. And by the way, in Australia, environmental humanities is called ecological humanities because some feel the word environmental is very shallow, is very superficial. If you ask botanists or zoologists, they will not be happy with the term environmental because they feel the term ecological gets into the crux of the problem. So he lived there and he says some radical philosophy for life. He says, don't buy a new set of clothes unless and until the set of clothes that you wear, the attire that you wear, is beyond mending, beyond repair. This is a conscious living. By doing this, I contribute to the sustainability of the planet, he says. What does the bison of the prairie need? He asks. What does the bison of the prairie need? Just a shelter, a kind of an awning when the rains come down, food, that is the few inches on edible food, the grass on the top layer, and some shelter. That's it. What else does the prairie bison need? And I think we all know this very famous philosophical novel by Daniel Quinn called Ishmael, which is something very redemptive, very restoring also, where there is a kind of a dialogue, a Socratic dialogue between the narrator and Ishmael. And this Ishmael says that human beings are basically divided into two types. One are the leavers, the other are the takers. I just trying to connect it with the Thoreau's Walden. The leavers are very conscious inhabitants or dwellers of the region. The takers are people, we must have seen this during the pandemic time, especially when the shops are open for 3 hours in the morning. All of us rushed to the shops, and in very few minutes, almost everything on the shelves disappeared. People took or grabbed even what was not needed. Panic. Right? So everything that they came to their hands, they desired, not needed. They put it all in their bags, and the cars were loaded. Takers. The civilized, according to Ishmael, are the takers who are not conscious of a sustainable practice. So this room that I inhabit today, this place, this region in environmental humanities, they don't use the word residence. They don't use the word place. They use the word life place. If you look up Henry Berg and the others, they will be very conscious about this place called life place, because the place is filled with life. Fritjof Capra says, if all the earthworms in this particular place were to be destroyed, the world will automatically self-destroy itself within a few months' time. If all the earthworms in this particular place were to be destroyed, this particular place would self-destroy itself. So there is no vimosana, there is no scope for the future of humankind because we live in an interconnected cosmos. Yesterday, the earthworms were there. What happened to the earthworms today? Yesterday, this bird species was there near my house. What happened to them today? The sparrows almost became extinct. Almost. The house sparrows that we regularly feed them almost became extinct. Now there are steps for reviving the species in environmental circles. What happened to this particular tree species? What happened to this particular reptile species? That was a part of my bioregional ethos. So, and how am I addressing these issues through the literature that I do? We call it, the Edward Lawrence calls it the butterfly effect. We all know the butterfly effect and the chaos theory. If a butterfly flutters in Australia, a tornado appears in the other part, the Antarctica or whatever, right? So, according to Edward Lawrence, everything in this world is interconnected. Environmental humanities emphasizes on this interconnectedness, what we call an interconnected consciousness. And the literatures that we do, the humanism that we do, the humanist or human anthropocentric literature that we do, what does it promote? You find the canonization, you find John Donne, you find all these metaphysical poets, they write to their lady love, valediction forbidding mourning for their lady love. Has there any poem been written, valediction forbidding mourning of a tree? All these human-centric or anthropocentric poems that have been taught to us down the ages have always determined our perspective to life, say the environmental humanists. Once there lived a king, why not once there lived an elephant? When we were in a tree walk very recently, one of the forest rangers told us, sir, the elephants that we see in this particular forest wildlife reserve are very important, sir. More than even the bisons, more than even the sloth, but they are very important. But even today, this morning, you must have read in the Times of India that a tiger, sorry to say that, a tiger, a 3-year-old tiger, was trapped and killed in Tamil Nadu. I don't want to go into the details. It was so shocking to read that incident this morning in the newspaper. A tiger was trapped. Maybe they wanted to kill some other animal, they said, but a tiger came into the trap. They say that these elephants, they almost take 350 kilograms of food every day, 250 liters of water every day. They have to walk anywhere between 30 and 50 kilometers every day, they say. But these elephants, the manure that they give, the dung that they give, it is responsible for 70% of the wildlife, the trees, the flora and the fauna in the jungles. He said, I was surprised. How come this can happen? So the elephants self-sustain themselves. And that is the importance. 80% of the Amazon forest considered the lungs of the world. We all know the Amazon forests are considered the lungs of the world. 80% of these Amazon forests were possible only because of the birds. This self-sustainability that the birds and the animals teach us. Heidegger gives a wonderful essay. He calls it the fourfold cosmos in Building, Dwelling, and Thinking. 1951, if I'm right. He talks about the fourfold cosmos. Gods, then earth, then man, and society. So he says everything else, not society, skies, everything else contributes to society. We say, the cosmos or gods provide. Provider or providence, we call another name for God is providence. Providential, we call it. The earth provides. Ecofeminism connects there. Like the earth is raped and mutilated, but still the motherly instinct in the earth continues to thrive. That's where ecofeminism comes in. The earth provides, the sky provides. But what about mortals or humankind? What do we provide for self-sustaining this planet? Environmental humanities takes this vital point into consideration. What is the responsibility of a teacher? Because we all know Michel Foucault says knowledge is disseminated mainly through two powerful media. Knowledge, he says power and knowledge are connected, right? In the archaeology of knowledge, he talks about the power knowledge connect. And Michel Foucault says knowledge is disseminated in society mainly through two vital sources. One is education. The second is medicine. So we all know how education plays a very pivotal role in shaping knowledge framework for society. Even Abdul Kalam sir, he went through his education. It shaped him. Even the president or the prime minister or the, any big shot, you would have seen they would have gone through this elemental education, Montessori education, primary education. And environmental humanists say education plays a very important role in shaping our perspectives. How long are we going to talk about once there lived some human? Or Northrop Frye very humorously says that most of the stories that we have, he says, 99.9% of the stories that we have in literature end either one of these three ways. Either there will be a wedding bell at the end, all's well that ends well, a wedding bell, or a funeral bell, that is a tragedy. Or there is a self-discovery, like in the Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, you find there is a self-discovery that happens. So either of these three, almost all our stories veer or center on either the wedding bells or the funeral bells. And mostly the hero will be on a search, on a quest. So where is the environment in our literatures? Where is nature in our literatures? Beyond the wedding bell, beyond the funeral bell, beyond the concept of self-discovery, where is nature in the scheme of things? How many poems do we have prescribed in our syllabus that center on giving nature an agency? In environmental humanities, we talk about the concept of agency. What is agency? The ability to act autonomously or independently. If a woman has agency, we call the woman is able to act autonomously of her own, take decisions on her own, independently. That means she has agency. Otherwise, she is denied agency. So we call it environmental agency or nature. Does nature have an agency? When I went down to just tie my lace in my shoe, the dog runs helter-skelter. When I raise my hands, the lizard runs helter-skelter, scurries away. Why? Because I have exhibited my dominance on this planet. And that is one reason why we have an anthropocentric view towards life. Ben Okri says, the stories that we live by shape us. They condition us. They give us our perspective. The movies that we see every other in 1960s, Laura Mulvey gave us something about the gaze. It was a very shocking text that she wrote about the male gaze. We all know that very famous text that she wrote on how 99% of the movies made till that particular year in the 1960s almost always catered only to the male gaze. So the male's point of view. The woman was represented or portrayed or stereotyped as someone voluptuous, someone sexy, or someone who has to be nude to attract the gaze of the male. Laura Mulvey's shocking discovery made heads turn. 1963, Betty Friedan wrote about the feminine mystique. She talks about how it was celebrated when the first woman wore jeans. Human perspective. Environmental humanities talks about an ecological gaze. A gaze, please remember, is a word that in Oliver Goldsmith also you find now. I gazed, I gazed, I gazed. The more I gazed, the more my wonder grew on how such a small head could contain all that he knew. Gaze means admire. When do you admire? According to Wordsworth also you find, no, I gazed and little thought what wonder that show to me had brought. Wordsworth says this. When you objectify something, you gaze. According to, when you objectify something, you gaze at a particular girl or a particular thing. So the gaze objectifies something. There is no agency for the person who is looked at. They have to just be an object at the mercy. Just imagine most of us going to hill stations. What do? We just look at everything around us, take photos or take videos. The Ooty flower show, especially when we go, we find that people go there not to admire the flowers, but to take photos of the flowers and then come back. The hill stations, we just take photos, objectifying. What Wordsworth did was almost the same. No harm to Wordsworth. He is one of the best nature poets we have. But environmental humanities or ecological humanities talks about a proactive approach towards nature. We all know theories till the 20th century that M.H. Abrams talks about in his Mirror and the Lamp. All the theories that we have had right till the post-structuralist theories have always been reactive. One theory comes up as a reaction to one other theory. Like, obviously, right, Aristotle wrote a reactive tirade against Plato's conception. So theories come. Catherine Belsey, in one of her books, Culture and the Real, she says theories came in plane loads, right, from France. So France was the place that gave theories a lot, she says. Theories didn't come by lorry loads. Theories didn't come by cart loads. Theories came by plane loads from France to all parts of the world. And all these theories that we have, textual theories, all these theories that we have always been reactive. Feminism as a theory has always been reactive against masculinism. Even internal reactions are there in feminism because the Africans don't want the term feminism because it is completely Westocentric. They use the words Theonism or womanism. In India, we have different terms for that, post-colonial feminism or third world feminism. Reactive. All theories have been reactive. The only theory that is not reactive, Stephen Covey, he uses this word proactive in the 7 Habits, right? He uses the word proactive. So one theory that we can say is proactive is eco-critical theories or environmental theories. They are not reactive. They always feel that what has happened has happened. What can be done? There is no criticism there, but what can be done? For example, my costly, expensive watch falls down. It has happened. I can't cry over spilt milk. But what can be done about it? I think about that. How to redress or address from now onwards. What are the steps I can take to address some of the issues that can help me come out of this? Education plays a very important role, especially primary education. Greta Thunberg, that little girl, I think she's a 2K kid, right, 2003. She was nominated thrice for the Nobel Prize. She had the guts to speak about climate change. She went all the way from Sweden to New York by a yacht. Why? Because she said carbon emissions from airplanes are too much to bear. And so she said, I'm not going to fly. I will never fly in my life, she said. She took a stand. And you know how much protest she got for that. Even recently, she refused to get any prizes for whatever noble work she's doing. The reason is, she said, climate doesn't require any awards. Nature doesn't require any awards. If we are true champions of nature and the environment, we will not be hunting for awards. She says, no, this is very interesting in the point of view of indigenous literatures. I don't know how much of indigenous literatures or native literatures are prescribed for us. At least, some indigenous literatures can be Aboriginal literatures from Australia, Inuit literatures from Canada, First Nations literature, we call it, Maori literature from New Zealand, Jarawa tribes, Andamanese literature, lots of indigenous literatures, the tribal literatures from Jharkhand, from many parts of India are there. How much of indigenous literature? Because indigenous literatures, they don't believe in autobiographies. They don't believe in self-writing. If you look at indigenous, because they feel you cannot tom-tom the self. What is there to pride about the self when everything around you is interconnected? When in a family, a mother won't want to say, hey, I am the leader. I want to write about my contribution to this family. Will she write, a book saying my contribution to my family? She will never write. She will just express her love. If someone were to give an award for being the best mother, do you think she will accept it? She will say, no, 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 it's my duty to my children. Will a father accept the best father award for fathering the child and giving the child a good education? He will say, it was my duty. And a duty born out of love, not because of any force or pressure. She says, Greta says, I will not accept any awards because I feel it is my duty to my family. When the river sleeps by, that famous Naga writer, Esther and Kire, she talks about how native literatures celebrate nature as part of their own. There is a character called Willie there in the novel who goes on a quest. And when they ask him why he doesn't marry, he gives a very, very interesting answer. It might sound weird to us, but he gives a very interesting answer. He says, the forest is my wife. I consider the forest as my wife, the river as my brother, the mountains as my sisters. So this kind of familial bonding that he has with his environment is something that indigenous literatures prescribe or provide us. But unfortunately, most of the literatures that we do, those Westocentric literatures or literatures that are anthropocentric, do not evaluate or look into this aspect of literature. So Willie says, like a forest, like a wife has to be nurtured, loved, cherished, the same way I have a responsibility to this forest. Like a wife has to be loved, I will love this forest. Like a wife has to be protected, I will protect. Like a wife has to be nurtured, I will nurture this forest. He doesn't see himself as separate from the forest in which he dwells, not resides. And so everything about the forest he knows. The cooing of the birds, the chirping of the birds, or the barking of the wild, everything he knows about the forest. This conscious living or interconnected consciousness, how much of this do we find in our literatures? Maybe we have a tokenist reading. We call the word tokenism, where we have a tokenist representation of such readings, maybe under one paper over 6 semesters, or maybe 1 or 2 nature poems that we prescribe, especially from Wordsworth. Pauline Johnson, another, Aboriginal writer says, I am not what they portray me to be. I am not what they write about me. This is very shocking, right? Like Derek Walcott, the Nobel laureate, says, I met history, but history doesn't recognize me. I met history once, but history doesn't recognize me. Kate Walker, or Udguru Nunukal, the Aboriginal name for this Australian poet, the first Aboriginal poet from Australia, we know her, no? Kate Walker, or Udguru Nunukal. She says, we are going. We are going means our customs, our rituals, our indigenous knowledge systems, we are going because the place that we inhabited for years and years and years, not years, centuries, has now been invaded by the whites. And they are going to use that place as a dump yard. The whites have established a factory there because they found this wildlife and this forest filled with natural resources closer to the river. And so they've established a factory. They are going to make this place as a dump yard. The Korobora, the sacred ground in which they came together for some divine things, is now going to be used. They found that ground so neat, so they wanted to use as a dump yard. We call it ecological imperialism. Not only trees, but also places. Kate Walker says, we are going. This is the 1960s when she wrote about this. 1970, there was a wonderful indigenous writing by Marcuse, Markoosie. Marcuse wrote a work called Harpoon of the Hunter, another indigenous work that was written that celebrates this interconnected consciousness. He's on a quest. It's a very radical work, and when it was reviewed by the so-called Western civilized elite, you know what they called it on its first publication? It's a very small book. You can't expect much from the Inuits, from the so-called content that the Western writers or others produce en masse. You can't expect that from the indigenous writers because they don't write about the self. They write about the interconnected life that they inhabit. So it was a very small kind of a novella that he had written. And the first review about that in the Western press was, it is so weird. So weird, it cannot be counted as a work of art. So Western rubrics, you have to call it New York bestsellers, or you have some of your own criteria to evaluate works of art. That's why I said the work of the literary critic or the academic critic has to undergo radical change. From exclusivity to inclusivity. Harpoon of the Hunter was slowly into oblivion. The same happened to the regional languages, the Inuit language in Canada. When the English colonized them, they felt that they cannot converse with them in the local language. And so they started mandating that if you don't study the English language, you will not get into government service. You will not get into mainstream work. If you want to even get into the fourth grade work, you will need to know your English, they said. That is why Michel Foucault talks about language connecting with power. Post-colonial studies, we talk about how language uh, colonizes our mind. Thiago talks about how the mind has been colonized by language to such an extent that we forget the culture that comes with our language. So what happened was people who started conversing in their native Inuit language slowly started embracing the English language. And over a period of time, you find an exodus of people so crazy about the English language. And we all know, Thiago tells us, language carries culture. Language carries, see a beautiful phrase, language carries culture, he says. So my culture and my language are interdependent. So these three, language, culture, and identity are always interdependent. You strip me of my language, you strip me of my culture and my identity. So What they did was the Westerners stripped them of their language and forced another language onto them to such an extent that they slowly lost grips with their culture. One generation, they spoke in their native language. The second generation, it became bilingual. The third generation, it almost became completely anglicized. And what was the result? You must have read this wonderful book by David Crystal. I think it is a must read for those of us who love ecology, environmental humanities. It's called Language Death, a book that is a must read for us. David Crystal, no? One of the pioneers of modern linguistics. He was in Chennai 15 years ago. Some of us from MCC also went to see him. He must be very quite old now. He was the one who wrote the two wonderful encyclopedias, no? The Encyclopedia of Language and the Encyclopedia on the English Language. Two books, powerful encyclopedias. He wrote a book called Language Death. It's a very shocking indictment. He says every year, thousands of languages are dying. And he says, when a language dies, an entire cultural ethos that comes along with that language vanishes or passes away. When a language falls into disuse, and he talks about one particular old person in a particular tribe who he said was the last speaker of the language. And once this person dies, the entire indigenous knowledge system that came with that language would also disappear, he says. Now, with a craze for English, with a craze for the status that surrounds speaking in English, how much of our indigenous language knowledge systems that we are losing out slowly and slowly over the years. Digital humanities, you must have discussed this also, I think, about how maybe in the next 10 years, we are told that all the indigenous knowledge systems, whatever has been safe, secured, and safeguarded in the libraries, when it comes into the digital sphere, how much of it would be translated into the digital sphere? Who will take up this responsibility? If you come to the archives in the Connemara Library, there are very old books which contains a lot of indigenous knowledge systems. As we embrace the digitized world, how much of this indigenous knowledge system do you think will be carried along with us? Who is going to take the responsibility of translating or transferring all these local knowledge systems into the digital world? Because we are told, or digital humanities scholars tell us, in the next 10 years, libraries would become museums, or libraries would almost become oblivious. Because let's be honest, most of us who do our research, we always go to just all the things that are available online. We go. How many of us really go to the library, sit, read, and research like we did in the past? If such libraries are going to vanish in the next 10 or 20 years, when was the last time we bought a book? Let's be honest to ourselves. When was the last time we bought a hard copy of a book? So if these indigenous knowledge systems aren't going to be transferred, no, maybe government may not embark on this huge project because it might require a lot of investment. Corporate social responsibility, maybe they should take it up. Donors should come forward. Humanitarians should come forward. People with a love for society should come forward. It involves a huge expenditure also. And it involves a meticulous preparation, painstaking research on how to compile them first, and what goes into the archives. Derrida wrote a wonderful essay called Archival Fever. We all know that. He says the archives are either filled with violence or silence. Violence or silence. Like Derek Walcott says, no, I met history once, but history doesn't recognize me. So, environmental humanities talks about the past, the present, and a prospective future which would be inclusive. How do we do that? Some steps as environmental humanist scholars that probably we can advocate in our own classroom, in our own educational institutions, maybe on birthdays, on wedding days, wedding anniversaries, on the birthdays of famous people. How many of us have taken the initiative to at least plant one tree sapling in our somebody's honor, or grandpa's honor, somebody's honor? How many of us are part of Save Tree movements that Sundarlal Bahuguna had in the in the up there in the north, Chipko movements that Vandana Shiva is faithfully practicing now. So happy, right? So how many of us are part of Save Tree movements, Save Tree campaigns? And as literature scholars or practitioners, how many of us can take this initiative to proactively engage with texts that resonate with a proactive approach to nature? We call ourselves proletariat, right? At least Marx and the Marxists would proletariats. But the environmental humanists say a better word would be planetariats. A planetariat means I am a dweller of this planet along with a whole lot of other species that inhabit this planet along with me. So maybe a reptile is going around my area. As a planetariat, I don't have the right to kill the snake. The snake has every right to inhabit this area. So the other day, one of my students came to visit me. So I asked him, there was a bird sitting on top of the tank. I just asked him, now what do you think this bird would be thinking now? If at all it were to think, just let's hypothesize. What would you think this bird would be thinking now? And he said, sir, this bird would be thinking about water or food. Or this bird would be thinking about her partner, whatever. Yes, you are right. But the bird would also be thinking the same place that my ancestors had beautifully inhabited with thousands of trees around today has become a concrete jungle. It is a right to inhabitation, to dwelling for this bird species also. Some of us do that, having some little water for these birds, especially in the summer seasons. The dogs that come to our area during the winter, especially during these rains, where will they go for shelter? We chase away these dogs. Where will these dogs go for shelter? Right? You will see dogs crawling under cars for the rains because they have nowhere to go. The birds don't have a shelter. They are afraid of coming near human habitations. What is my contribution? What is the contribution that I am going to make? And this is the attitudinal change that environmental humanities advocates. Some little steps I'd just like to enumerate as part of the environmental humanist initiative. They are against a global monoculture. What is this global monoculture? A global monoculture would mean not a multicultural environment, but a monoculture that would promote one over the other, especially when it comes to food. The environmental humanists and the subsection of that, the bioregional scholars would have us believe that the food that grows in a region around you, 100 kilometers, 50 to 100 kilometers around your region would be the best food for you. You need not import food from elsewhere. Olive oil or anything that doesn't grow in your area is not good for you, they say. They advocate. They call it the local food movement or the slow food movement. And they're dead against processed food. They feel that processed food that comes from the US or from the UK or from Australia that comes down to us is not at all good for us. The pizzas and the burgers that we take in every day, according to environmental humanists, they have a different perspective on art. They have a different perspective on culinary studies. They say it's not good. This is part of a global monoculture. I'm not against Domino's or I'm not against, what is this KFC's thing? No, I'm not against. But they are not part of the local food movement. And they don't do any good for the body. they say. So they advocate a food that is found locally. It could be anything that you get locally in your region. Another question that they ask is, where do you think the water in your home or in your college come from? Where do you think that? Now, immediately it says that it comes from the water tank. It comes from the well. How long does this water you think would last? How long would this water last? Maybe 40 years ago when we were all kids, let's be honest, how many of us drank canned water or mineral water, right? Maybe in the 1980s, when we were kids, most of us here would know, we used to drink the tap water in our schools, right? So we just opened the tap, drink the water. For many, many years, we did that. Nothing happened. 2009, when Medha Patkar came to MCC, she was going to address a lecture when we were all part of the audience. Suddenly she said, son, come here, to one of the student organizers. Remove these water bottles on the table. He was surprised. Ma'am, what? Yeah, remove these water bottles on the table. There were some XYZ company water bottles on the table. Then he removed 2 of them. Remove all of them, she said. I don't advocate these water bottles. 2009. And after that, he removed everything. Then she went up to the dais and she said, I don't have any right to steal another person's right to their water that they have preserved for hundreds of years, maybe. Where do we get this water from? This mineral, so-called mineral water. Now they've changed the word, packaged drinking water. Where do you think this water comes from? Someone somewhere has been cherishing it for long, that pure crystal clear water, groundwater. These great MNCs go there, drain them of their water, pack it and sell it for a premium. Even these Pepsi Colas, the same thing they do. Gallons and gallons of water are being wasted in the process. Where do you think the water we drink comes from? How long do you think this water will last? Is it sustainable? Am I conscious of this? Maybe, when I see people washing their cars with water for hours and hours, are they conscious of this loss? Are they conscious of sustainability? These are some of the things that environmental humanities addresses. It could be through environmental art, the art that we do. It could be through the stories, the environmental stories. Once there lived an elephant. She looked sad. Most of the stories that we have, I told you about Ben Okri. Ben Okri says the main malady or the problem that we have in society is because of the stories that we are told. If Nietzsche calls us superior beings, if Freud calls us sexual beings, if Marx calls us social beings, Derrida calls us textual beings, Ben Okri calls us storied beings. We are storied beings. We all grew up with stories. And these stories shape our perspective to life. Maybe if our mothers would have told us something about the problems of climate change, we would have been aware about that. We'd be conscious about that. I admire J. Krishnamurti for that. All my talks will always have Jiduji or J. Krishnamurti. He has written a lot of books on education, on nature and the environment, on nature, on the right type of education, lots of books. I've even distributed 100 copies of his books free of cost to students. He gives a perspective on nature that is something radical, that is the need of the hour here, and we should be proud of that. He says, he used to have his kids around him, the school, the Rishi Valley schools we all know. He used to have students around him, little tiny folks around him, and he used to teach them or inculcate in them the art of empathizing with the trees and the plants. He will ask them, there are 2 words. He will ask them to pay attention. He doesn't like the word concentrate. He says, when you try to concentrate, you'll be distracted. So he uses the word pay attention. Pay attention to the sound of the birds. Pay attention to the rustling of the leaves. Pay attention to the cooing. Pay attention to the chirping, to the barking, to the trumpeting, to the roaring. When you pay attention, you will have a different perspective, he says. So he has these pupils around him, and then he takes one particular plant and he gently plucks one leaf from the plant. And he tells them and he teaches them. Do you realize, are you aware about how much pain would have come to this tree sapling when one leaf was plucked out of her? When just one leaf is plucked out of this particular sapling, and the kids around JK literally used to have their eyes welled up with tears. Such was the empathy that he was able to cultivate in his students. Chitra Divakarani Banerjee tells us this. The real power of literature is to cultivate empathy in the reader. If my literature doesn't cultivate this empathy in me, we say no, literature transforms, theory liberates, research makes a difference. No, the three steps. Literature transforms, theory liberates. If I cannot cultivate this empathy in my kid for nature, for the dogs, when a boy hits a dog with a stone, how bad the dog will feel. Training the student in this art of empathy, he says, will make the student aware of this interconnected life she's living, she's dwelling. And the next time she sees someone even hurting, I've seen some students do this, not everyone, some students who maybe who are not conscious of this, when they go by, even as they walk across, they will just pluck a branch or a twig from a tree, just for the heck of it. And then they'll throw it away. How many years must it have taken for a branch to grow this way? Especially on the highways, you'll find when a lorry or a car or a jeep has suffered a breakdown, you'll find a beautiful tree that is there on the sides of the road. One huge branch will be broken from the tree and it will be placed there as a warning for others. As a warning, you'll have to break a huge branch of a tree and tie it at the back of the lorry. How pathetic a perspective we have towards our nature. Be it elephants, be it dogs, be it cows, be it birds. Teaching this or cultivating this spirit of empathy in our students. The other week, when we were driving down a hilly road, I was shocked to see some students in a tourist bus, school students in a tourist bus. They were having their breakfast. They just finished the breakfast and they were throwing everything out of the bus onto the road, into the highway. Just like that, they were throwing it. And I was feeling a bit guilty also as a teacher. What have I done here? As teachers, what do we do about this? How do we empathize? How do we emphasize on the student the importance of not throwing litter away, especially when it is a forest? A fed animal is a dead animal, they say, especially when we are in a forest. We are not supposed to feed the animals in the forest. Strict rules. Jungle reserves, they have strict rules. The deer, we're not supposed to feed it because a fed animal is a dead animal. We have no right to feed it. We are robbing the animal of her right to living in her own space. After that, this ecological balance will be done away with. So the stories, Ben Okri says, should change for the better. So what difference, the last question I asked was, what difference does this education make to my attitudes? Or what difference does this literature, let's be very specific, make to my attitudes towards nature? After 3 years of an undergraduate program, does my attitude towards nature change for the better? Does it instill in me the fact that the river is my brother? I should not pollute the river. The birds around me require the same care and concern that my own kid needs. Does it cultivate the spirit of empathy, ecological empathy, we call it? Does the education that we have today, as part of the UG or the PG program, cultivate the spirit of empathy that JK advocates? So, when I became the syllabus revision convener in my department, the first thing I did was include Vandana Shiva and J. Krishnamurti in the syllabus because I thought they are indispensable. And wherever I go for board of studies also, uh, two or three people whom I advocate are, one is Vandana Shiva, the next one is J. Krishnamurti. And obviously, you have Rachel Carlson, others are there, Walden, Thoros, Walden is there, other things are there. But environmental humanities also talks about closer home. You have great role models. Vandana Shiva has come up with Earth University, something that is a great celebration for the entire world. Where, who are the teachers? The farmers are the teachers, the professors. Earth University has a completely different perspective. You don't have many students there, just around 400, 500 students would be there from all over the world, from 51 or 60 nations. They are there studying there, the best practices in agriculture. Earth University, she calls it Earth Democracy, Earth rights, like we call human rights. There is something called Earth rights that she advocates. Earth Democracy, eco rights. Dr. Nirmal Selumani had framed some rights as eco rights. Like we have human rights. They also have the right to agency as much as I have a right to agency. I cannot just like that go and cut down a tree. I don't have any right. And that is where Aboriginal literatures come to the main picture. The Aborigines always have this interconnected consciousness that before they fell down a tree, they do a lot of penance. They do a lot of rituals. For 7 days, they do this rituals because my first PhD was on James Fraser's The Golden Bough, where he talks about these rituals of the Aborigines. They used to go around the tree, venerate before the tree, prostrate before the tree, and then promise the tree, oh dear, venerated, respected tree, we have to cut you down for, they will list out the reasons, and then they will say, we promise that 100 of your children, 100, at least 100 of your children, we will plant around you so that your memory sustains. Their relationship with nature was so harmonious. It was not exploitative, it was integrative. We use this term in Chennai from Dr. Nirmal Selumani again. Right? Integrative oikos, not a hierarchical oikos or an anarchical oikos. And what are some of the objectives of environmental humanities? There are lots of books on the subject, but environmental humanities doesn't have binaries. The first line of Mending Wall by Robert Frost, beautiful first line, I love a lot. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Something there is. I've asked my students this. What is that something that doesn't love a wall? A beautiful, immortal opening line, because we always pay a lot of attention to these opening lines, in novels or in short stories or in poems. Canonization, for God's sake, hold your tongue. Abrupt opening, we call it. Here, say something there is. What is that something? Nature. Nature doesn't love a wall. But I say good fences make good neighbors. So I love a wall, I build a wall. But nature doesn't love binaries. And that is where environmental humanities is not an oxymoron. Environment and the humanities, it's like the concept of life place where they both coexist or they can dwell together. And why is this needed today? I'll just give you a few instances from literatures that we practice, and especially from tribal or aboriginal literatures, and what is the way forward. Maybe I'll take about 30 uh, 30 minutes. Right, I'll take maybe about 30 minutes, and then I'll uh, give you a break for questions and answers. Right? So the concept of identity that we have today is completely resident centered, we call it. My identity, if I were to ask to define my identity, I would call myself a professor of English literature in this particular college. I live in this particular place. I have this identity. But environmental humanists say your identity is not in these artificial, superficial things. Your identity is based on a sense of a larger community that exists along with you. So I say, I dwell in a place which is rich in red soil. I dwell in a place which is rich with Rufus tree pies or jungle sparrows or house miners or house sparrows, which is rich in neem trees and tamarind trees. I dwell in a place that has 2 lakes and 5 ponds. I dwell in a place where there is an abundant supply of these particular species of flora and fauna. I live in a place, or I dwell in a place where these species of reptiles abound. So my sense of identity is based on a sense of a larger community, which includes all these flora and fauna around me. And that is where we talk about the importance of language to environmental humanities. In fact, language is the fulcrum for environmental humanities. We all know this wonderful field that is becoming very popular today, ecolinguistics. The reason why ecolinguistics is becoming popular today is only because of the fact that the language that we have been professing, practicing all these decades and centuries has always been anthropocentric. We can also call it patriarchal in a way, or anthropocentric. Be it the words that we use, the proverbs that we use, that demean. I'm some of you who know Tamil. Most of us, I think, would know Tamil. How we use derogatory words when we want to abuse a person using flora and the fauna around us. If we can list or make a list of these particular demeaning terms that we use. For example, we say, Nai mari kolaikira. You are barking like a dog. Maramande. Maramande means what? Your head is like a tree. Kalude. Yerumamadu. See, the terms that we use, we call, there is a term for that. It's called microaggression. Microaggression means innocuously, without meaning it, we attack another person or animal or things. In English, we use the term bird brain. Bird brain means literally not mentally stable. Most of the terms that we use that give us our sense of language, the proverbs that we use. Chinua Achebe says, proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten in African society. Like, we put something in the frying pan or in the oil, fry it, and then eat it. Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten, says Chinua Achebe in Things Fall Apart. The proverbs that have been handed down to us, the language that we have acquired, the texts that we have acquired, the literature that we have acquired, are they inclusive in their appeal? Or do we have to move towards another era where we have an inclusive language that would include nature also under its rubric? I've asked my students this. Can you define the word community? So many of them look puzzled when I ask them, sir, what do you mean by community? Is it a particular caste? or is it a particular race or a particular religion? No one ever tried to ask, sir, are you talking about the ecological community? The word community for us would always mean a community of people. Why can't we include the birds, the animals, the trees, the flora and fauna as part of the community? Most of the derogatory terms, let's be very honest with ourselves. And why is that? Maybe that's because of the stories that were handed down to us. We call the fox as a sly fox, a cunning fox. And the other day when I was in Anamalai Tiger Reserve, the foresters there said, when I had an interaction with some of my friends there, they said, sir, you would be shocked to know. They said this, right? I'm not sure. They said, sir, that you would be shocked to know that the species called the fox is almost extinct. Almost extinct. And he says, in one particular district alone, he says more than 58,000 peafowl. Peafowl means peacocks and peahens, right? They are there. They are spread like anything. Now we are not able to control it. They are there on the roads and every other place because of this ecological imbalance. When one becomes extinct, another becomes huge and another becomes extinct. So he says this ecological balance, this harmony in ecology couldn't be achieved because some of the species, the samba deer, 60% of the species have slowly become extinct. They have a beautiful connection with, but still we use derogatory terms against these flora, the fauna around us. And how do we shape the future of environmental humanities? What are the things that needs to be addressed? The first step is an address on the power of empathy, cultivating empathy. The 5 questions that I asked in the beginning of the lecture. The 5 questions. What good does my literature make to me? What is the function of the teacher as a practitioner of literature? Function means the role and responsibility of a teacher as a practitioner of literature. What is the function of the scholar? Today, when research scholars come up to us, even at the PG level, they say, sir, we want to work on Othello as a tragedy, as if there were no topics around. Wordsworth as a nature poet, as if no one knows that Wordsworth is a nature poet. Hamlet as a tragedy. Everyone knows that. Paradise Lost as an epic. Everyone knows that. Catherine Belsey says research is something new that we contribute to the already existing body of knowledge. Right? In the book called The Critical Practice, a must read for all research scholars. She says something new that you contribute. My research, if it has been anthropocentric and if it doesn't include these vital pressing issues that bother me, how am I going to explore my function, my role and responsibility as a teacher of literature? And let's remember, our kids today are very sharp. Whatever we tell them, they easily take it. When we give an anthropocentric account of things, even when we do John Donne, we can still tell them what is missing here or who is missing in action here. When we have a novel like Northrop Frye says, either wedding bells or funeral bells, or there is one guy who gets awareness, self-introspection. Apart from these 3, what is missing there? Where is nature? Like Kate Walker says, we are going. Where is nature in my study? What is the function of the scholar, research scholar? Today, especially in the West, a lot of emphasis is given on bioregional studies, environmental humanities. When in 2016, if I'm right, please check the year, when Amitav Ghosh wrote The Great Derangement I'm so happy and proud that we have such a great writer called Amitav Ghosh. Um, whenever literary festivals happen, we make it a point to go and meet him also personally, just to talk to him and get it autographed from him. The Great Derangement, where he talks about the crisis of our times. It's a must read. It's a non-fiction. It's a must read. And most of his novels, you'll have this burden for nature or climate or society. In his novels, you'll find it as the golden thread that connects all his novels. I wish and pray that he gets the Nobel Prize. So, in The Great Derangement, he talks about a crisis in academia today, a great crisis in academia. That's what he calls a great derangement, a great crisis of our times, especially in academia. I told you, Michel Foucault talks about two fields through which knowledge is disseminated. One is through the field of medicine, and the other is through the field of education. The doctor writes COVID-19, it is COVID-19. The doctor writes TB, it is TB. The doctor comes out with a new disease, it is a new disease. Immediately, it spreads all over the world. The same with an academic. And Amitav Ghosh says, academia today suffer from a crisis. It's a great crisis, he calls it. And what is this great crisis? He calls it the crisis of imagination. One writer in the world today who's very conscious of the environment around us, who had the guts to write about this. The crisis of imagination. What is this crisis of imagination? We always focus on the man or the woman or love in our scheme of things. Be it any recent movie that we saw, be it any recent play or TV series or web series that came up recently. How much of nature do you find given agency in that particular movie? This is something that he calls the crisis of imagination of our times. Our children go into another world altogether, and he calls it technological fat. Technological fat means our children today are filled with this what's technological fat, not able to move anywhere else, glued to their couch like couch potatoes in the past, glued to their couch, to their sofas, sit there for hours together watching either OTT or cell phones. He calls it technological fat that our children today, and he says the sitting rooms are shockingly funeral parlors. You know what's a funeral parlor, right? Funeral parlors where there is no activity that is happening. Why is that? Because of this crisis of imagination of our times. And where does it start? In the heart of the educational enterprise. As teachers and as research scholars, we have this noble responsibility on us, says Amitav Ghosh. What is this? To help our students, to help our children. And where does it begin? This power of empathy. Where does it begin? It doesn't begin elsewhere. It doesn't begin in the world out there. Charity begins at home. Maybe Lyotard, Jean-Francois Lyotard, has written on this concept called libidinal economy. Libidinal economy is a very interesting term. He has taken this from Freud, the concept called libido, the pleasure principle that drives us. In 1895, Freud wrote about studies in hysteria, where he talks about this human being as a sexual being. The sexual impulse predominates in every human being, he says. He takes the word libido from Freud and came up with a term called libidinal economy. He wrote a book on that, libidinal economy, where markets today focus not on giving you intellectual food, but on food that caters to the libido. Libido means to the pleasure. Anything that we do on TV, on YouTube, you'll find they pander to your pleasure buds. It could be your food, It could be your clothing, it could be a shelter. They always, he says, they always make you feel that you lack something. Always. So you find something on Amazon. Amazon always makes you feel that you lack something. It could be your beauty. You lack beauty. You lack a fair skin. You lack a clean face. You lack good hair. You need this. You lack this product in your home. They emphasize and make sure you become so conscious of that you feel guilty because of that lack. That is libidinal economy. Making you feel guilty at your expense. You all know what Harari says about that in Homo sapiens and 21 lessons for the 20th century. How these algorithms are tuned to promote this lack in us. Very shocking that Yuval and Ghosh and Lyotard tell us. Lyotard tells us that, you all know what Harari tells us, based on the likes that you give on Facebook, based on the likes that you give on Instagram, maybe a minimum of 100 likes, Facebook will tell you who is the right person for you to marry, who is the right person for you to love. Because whatever you have liked, correspondingly, the taste, everything. And algorithms are made in such a way, like in 1978, that famous book that he wrote on the postmodern condition, Lyotard wrote. He said, the future of society doesn't depend on human beings, it depends on data. Libidinal economy is tuned by data to such an extent they create or generate this lack constantly in us. There was a humorous quote that went about the other day that said, the moment GPay was introduced, in the next 20 years, you are going to see almost paupers in every family. The moment GPay was introduced, who said about this for the first time? 1996, if I'm right. Please check it out, 1996 or 97. Bill Gates spoke about this phenomenon called business at the rate of thought, business at the speed of thought. He said, one day will come when you will all have in your homes a device that will be called a convergent device. You can print from the device, you can order food from the business at the rate of thought. Business at the speed of thought. Can you think something? Immediately it comes to you. 3 minutes they promise. Within 3 minutes, if it doesn't come, you will be given a compensation, 100 rupees. Business at the speed of thought. How these capitalist economies drive us to this lack and make us feel guilty that we lack. Always, almost all the time. Libidinal economy. Now, how do we wean ourselves away from this libidinal economy? It's very difficult, right? Because all of us are almost obsessed with these libidinal economies that Lyotard talks about, these algorithms that always datify all the things that we do, even the words that we speak. The other day, one of my friends was trying to book a flight to America, to Texas, I think. So I told him, don't even speak out the word Texas on this particular date, because immediately the algorithms, they will take this word and there will be a quiet, subtle hike in the prices on that particular day. How we have fallen prey to the libidinal economy, how it capitalizes on our vulnerabilities, and how do we come out of it? It is not outside, it is within. Environmental humanities advocates the way out is the way out. That's a beautiful term, no? The way out of this mess is the way out. Like Walden Thoreau says, I wanted to live deeply. Living deeply would make me think twice before I buy something. Do I really need a new set of shirt for me? Do I really need to go to this XYZ Pizza Mart? Do I really need to go to this particular Burger Mart or this McDonald to this Walmart. How many of us have proudly displayed the Domino's in our DP? Have we ever displayed drinking a tender coconut in our DPs? We don't do that. One of the best nutritional drinks that we ever can have going away. Now I'm also speaking with conviction because I've never touched Pepsi or Coke anytime. It's been almost 10 years now since I touched Pepsi or Coke, thanks to some personal convictions. So they do a whole lot of harm than good to us. How do we inculcate these values to our students? Teaching them empathy, teaching them the right, giving them the right type of education, giving them the right type of stories, reorienting them towards the territory that we live in. We call ourselves deterritorialized. So how do we live a reterritorialized living? Deterritorialized means we have not been conscious of the place or aware of the place in which we dwell. So when I reterritorialize myself, I re-inhabit a region. How do I re-inhabit a region? Through interconnected consciousness. Cultivating this sensibility not only in our kids, in our students, but through the conferences that we do, through the seminars that we do, through the FDPs. I'm so happy that the management wanted to have a concept on environmental humanities prescribed here. Thomas King wrote a very wonderful, a native writer, First Nations writer, wrote a wonderful short story called Borders. Some of you would be familiar with this wonderful short story. We have it prescribed in our college also as part of the master's program in English. In this particular short story, there is a woman who is crossing the borders from Canada to America just to meet her daughter. So this woman is accosted. She is questioned at the border by the authorities, asking her, which nationality does she belong to? Is she a Canadian or an American? She says, no, no, no. I'm not a Canadian. Then, are you American? No. I'm Blackfoot. Blackfoot, like the Inuit, is a tribe. Then they say, no, 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 you have to say either Canadian or American. She gets very angry. Her young son is standing with her. She gets very angry and she says, how dare you ask me to call myself a Canadian or an American? I don't succumb to that. We have been born and brought up in this particular place. We have been dwelling in this particular place for thousands of years. Do you know your ancestors? She asks. How many generations of ancestors you know? Maybe you'll know your father and your grandfather. We can tell you 20 generations of our ancestors. How much do you know about this place? Yesterday you came, you drew a line, an LOC, and you said, this is America, this is Canada, and you asked me to call myself a Canadian or an American. How dare, she says. Soon the press comes there. Soon becomes very sensational, but she is very firm on her identity. She says, my identity is not based on these superficial features. It is based on my sense of community. I belong here. I dwell here. I inhabit here. Because Blackfoot, Blackfoot means the term also comes like that. They don't wear sandals or shoes on them because they feel their connect with the land will be separate. They have a lot of respect for the earth in which they dwell. So finally, the press comes up and there is a lot of chaos there. And they request her finally, ma'am, we will allow you to go. Just to say you are Canadian, or because for immigration purposes, we'll have to get it from you. She says, no, I can't. Her son, who has always been very critical of her, for the first time, he looks up to her with admiration. And her daughter, who has been watching all this pandemonium TV from America, she's shocked. She doesn't know that her mother has this aspect on her. And very soon, the authorities gave her a royal salute and they say, ma'am, you can walk across. My identity, my individuality is based on the place, the life place, or the community in which I inhabit. And that is important for my restoration and my rejuvenation. This is the concept that environmental humanities celebrates. The humanities that we have today, right from the 15th century, has always made us aware of only one facet of life. There is a beautiful other perspectives to life that have to be first liberated and then celebrated. Let's maybe take a small resolve to liberate our syllabus, liberate our minds, liberate our souls, liberate our hearts to include this beautiful phenomena called nature and the environment and the ecology into our homes, into our syllabi, into our curricula, into our classrooms. Now, we do that in MCC. On particular days, we ask students to plant trees. We tell them, you can plant a tree sapling as a class, and then after 10 years, you can come back, it will be a huge vriksham. Then you can sit under that, like Toru that says, no, our Kashmirina tree. Our Kashmirina tree, she says. So we will have, he belongs to us, or she belongs to us, or the tree belongs to us. It's ours. She's a part of us. So as part of this particular interdisciplinary framework, if we can try to have this inclusive perspective, the last question that I said was not only literary critics, not only the role of academic critics or the public critics, they judge or evaluate a work of art based on their own fascinations. The hero could have done better. The heroine was very emotional. Right? The other day when Amaran movie came, me and my, we were, because as MC, since we wanted to see it on the first day for show, we were so emotional seeing the movie. And some of them said, no, the heroine is doing overtly emotional, excessively emotional. We look only at those perspectives. It would be a Rajinikanth movie or a Kamal Haasan movie. We look at it only from that. Have we looked at it from another perspective? Have we looked at it from an ecological perspective? The academic critic's role should change for the better. The public critic's role has to change for the better, to evolve for the better. The role of the educator has to evolve for the better. The role and the function and the responsibility of the teacher of literature is immense. Every teacher holds in your hands, in their hands, the seeds for the future of the environment. Each of us, as teachers, we hold in our hands the seeds of the future of our planet. The moment we enter class, till the moment we finish our classes, as research scholars, we have this great responsibility. Arjun Appaduri in this 2006 essay, The Right to Research, it's a wonderful essay. I think research scholars can read this essay. He says, you and I are privileged to do research. Not everyone has the blessed opportunity to do research. Many students go for jobs after they do the UG. Many students disappear after the PG because of commitments back at home. Only a few blessed people have this privilege of doing research. So the research that you and I do is something so sacred. Is something that should make a difference to society's perspective of or attitude. That was the last question I had asked. What good does my study of literature make to my attitude, to my perspective of life, of people, of society, of nature, of the entire community around me? If we can address these challenges, I think the study of environmental humanities would really serve its blessed purpose. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. So in our region too, in central India, majority of tribal people dwell with the attitude of love and amalgamation of the environment. Ours means we call coexistence. That's beautiful. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Raghu. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Nita. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Dinesh, Dr. Saktya. Yeah, M.H. Abrams. Dr. Satya, it is M.H. Abrams. Yeah, ABRA. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Paul, Dr. Beulah. Thank you, Dr. Kirtana, Dr. Muttamil Chelvi. Thank you, Dr. Subhash. Hi, Dr. Subhash from Goa. Right, thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jacqueline. Enlightening and uplifting sessions. Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. And if you are interested in environmental humanities, I can also pass on some material on environmental humanities. Thank you, Dr. Daisy. So Dr. Sundar, Professor Sundar from Theni, so happy, a passionate reader, a voracious reader. Thank you so much. So there are a lot of material available on environmental humanities, maybe if you need it, and even tribal indigenous writers. There are many of them available in case you wish to have them. J. Krishnamurthy's books are there. In case you wish to have them prescribed, I can also give you an entire list. Vandana Shiva's books are there. Maybe this we can do as a kind of reorienting ourselves towards the concept of literature. Thank you, Dr. Kamaleshwari.
Thank you so much, sir. Dear participants, it's time for discussion. If you have any questions, you can ask.
Yeah, very good question, Ms. Kirtana. Sir, what possible academic challenges the researcher may face in environmental humanities? Yes, quantitative research is something that is plaguing environmental humanities, especially qualitative research we can do, but quantitative research is very difficult in environmental humanities because you'll have to do a lot of field work, like Claude Levi-Strauss did, no? Doing a lot of field work on the field. Maybe it could be any tribal belt or it could be any particular area. So that these are some of the challenges. But if you happen to go to this one of the first tribal museums, I'm not saying in the superlative because I'm not sure. There is a tribal museum in Andhra. I think it's near Arakavali in Andhra Pradesh. One of the best tribal museums that I've ever seen. Right, there are quite a few other tribal museums, but I think any person who wishes to do your research in environmental humanities, the first thing I do is ask them to go and visit this tribal museum. It's amazing. They have taken a lot of, I'm not trying to promote this government museum there, but still, I want to just say that it is simply mind blowing. They have taken a lot of initiative and effort, to develop the concept of how indigenous knowledge systems work, and it is simply awe-inspiring. Maybe one visit there can transform our sensibility towards environmental humanities. Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. Your lecture has truly deepened our understanding of the intersection between the environment, literature, culture, and human responsibility. And you have highlighted the role of humanities in addressing environmental crisis reminding us how narratives, ethics, and human values can help us engage with the ecological challenges we face today. You have truly inspired us with your knowledge and perspective. You have provided us to think critically and act responsibly for our planet. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Can I answer this one question that Dr. Sundar has asked me? What type of environmental literature which is related to our students' expectations? In Tamil, Jayamon, rubber novel, or short stories, they possible. How is it in English, sir? Yes, we have what is called bioregional literary studies that connects with students' expectations. That's a very good question. We have bioregional literary studies, which is an offshoot of environmental studies or eco-critical studies that is we're finding much popularity today because it connects with the place in which the life place in which the student hails from or in which we are dwelling. So bioregional studies is there, uh, geocritical studies is there, geo studies is there, eco-regional. The original term was eco-regional studies. It was in the 19th century. Even Thoreau talks about that. Then it became bioregional studies. Berg talks about it. And how disabled people connect themselves with nature is again a very good question. Maybe I can pass on a couple of books to you on because it comes under disability studies. There is another term like post-colonial eco-criticism. You have disabled and the environment. It's a wonderful field of study. I have two books on that aspect. Maybe I can pass it on to Dr. Amirda. I can do that. Good questions. Thank you. Dr. Siddharth, thank you. Could you please comment on the relevance of eco-feminist literary narratives in contemporary India? Very much, very much, yes. Because ecofeminism has gained a lot of traction in India, especially from the post-colonial perspective. Uh, when it comes to land, when it comes to ravaging the land, the flora and the fauna, how much does it connect with the women? How much of it relates with the women? And how do we address this vis-a-vis how we address the problem or the concerns of the women? You can take any number of social issues that happen and try to connect it. I don't want to go into any specific aspect. A lot of issues that connect with agency for the woman that is denied, maybe in the house, in the home, in society, the glass ceilings that we have. The same happens to nature also, ecology also. So it is ecofeminism. There are a lot of books available on the subject. Maybe I can also pass on a few of them to you, Dr. Siddharth. But it is a wonderful field of study that you can really find it very rewarding also. And Dr. Nita, sir, is it the urbanization, corporate life, technology that is causing us detached from what we call dwelling? Yes, that's right. To a great extent, right. Because our way of life, the technology, technologically induced fat that he says, not technologically induced fat. We don't come out of our houses. Today, we find even in the train or even in the buses, we find people engrossed in their cell phones more than they look around. Even in college, I tell my students this. Now, when you at least enter college, we have a 320-acre huge campus. We are one of Asia's largest scrub jungles. So I tell students, at least the time you enter college, just try to look around you. Look at the birds. Look at the trees. Look at the deer that is running here and there. Look at the dogs. Look at the peacocks. At least try to look at them, right? Don't be engrossed in your cell phones. Now, students are slowly getting these ideas in their minds. Now they have become empowered. They feel they have a responsibility. I've seen many students saying, sir, for my birthday, I wish to plant a tree sapling. So yes, our maybe the corporate style of functioning, living has caused a problem for us, but I think there is a way out of this mess. Can you suggest one or two terms that is relevant to bioregionalism? Yes, the life place, I called it. No, the concept of life place and the concept of uh, slow food movement. All these terms they connect. Slow food movement is a very sensational term in bioregional studies. Life place, theory of life place is there. Okay, Mr. Siddharth. Yeah, best wishes to become a doctor of philosophy soon. Sir, can you please suggest some literary texts by Indian writers which would enable the student to connect themselves to the community they belong to? Yes, there are lots of texts because tribal writers, especially from many parts of India, I can give you a whole list of them. There are writers. Not all of them are like Wordsworth doing superficial stuff there. Uh, Many examples you have in India, especially the recent folk, the recent bunch of writers who write, they write very consciously. You know, by the way, if you, as passionate lovers of literature, are interested in meeting such eco enthusiasts, the Bangalore Literature Festival is happening on the 14th and 15th of December. I might be there. So if you are interested, you can see at least some 300 to 400 writers there who will be coming there. You can, before that, but you should do some reading on those particular writers, and then you can come there. This Naga writer that I said, no, Esterin Kire is there, and many other writers are there, right? Amita Ghosh is there, and many writers from Tamil Nadu are also there. Because if I prescribe one writer, it should not become political, right? So I don't want to prescribe one particular writer in favor of the other. I can give you a list maybe. Um, Sir, can we combine aging studies and environmental humanities? Could you suggest a few books on it? Yes, geriatric literary studies is there. Obviously, you can definitely do that. Environmental humanities, that would be something really, really path-breaking if you are to study the concept of gerontology or geriatric literary studies, literary gerontology with environmental humanities. You can definitely do that. There are lots of books. Um, I myself have. I'll send it on to you. Right, I'll pass it on to you. Maybe I'll type out my email ID here. It is rufusmcc@gmail.com. If you just mail me, I'll send you a list of books, especially research scholars. You might be wanting to do more on the subject. Definitely, I'll be glad to help.
Thank you, sir. A warm and graceful afternoon to one and all present here. As we conclude the fifth day faculty development program on environmental humanities, it is my honor to deliver the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Almighty God for blessing us with the wisdom and guidance throughout this program. It is through His grace that we have come together to engage in such a meaningful discussions. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Samuel Rufus, for sharing invaluable insights on this critical topic. Your presentation not only highlighted the pressing environmental issues we face, but also inspired us to integrate humanities into our understanding of these challenges. Thank you for taking the time to enlighten us with your expertise and passion. Your words will undoubtedly resonate with us as we strive to promote environmental awareness in our academic endeavors. Thank you, sir, once again for gracing us with your presence. I extend my I extend my sincere thanks to our correspondent, Mr. S. Premkumar Rajasingh, whose unwavering support and commitment to enhancing academic excellence is truly inspiring. A special note of appreciation goes to our principal, Dr. G.V.S. Rajakumari, whose leadership and encouragement have motivated us all. I would like to thank our organizing secretaries, Dr. Y. Pramila Anbarasi and Dr. J. Maristella, for their meticulous planning and execution. Your hard work behind the scenes has ensured that everything runs smoothly, allowing us to focus on enriching content of the program. A heartfelt thank you to our convener, Dr. Beulah Hemalata, for your guidance and support in shaping the agenda of this FDP.
I would like to acknowledge our coordinator, Dr. T. Jude Livingston, and other organizing committee members for their tireless efforts in managing logistics and ensuring that every detail was attended to. Your dedication has not gone unnoticed. And to all participants, thank you for your active engagement and enthusiasm. The discussions we have had will undoubtedly inspire us to integrate the principles of environmental humanities into our teaching and research. Let us carry the spirit of collaboration and learning into our next meeting. Thank you. Thank you all once again. Thank you so much.